Welcome to the Not Just Waiting podcast. I'm your host, Rihanna Hoffman, and this is a space for women learning to wait well and live fully. Whether you're in the middle of uncertainty, transition, or just figuring out what's next, this podcast is here to remind you you are not behind, not forgotten, and definitely not just waiting. Let's dig into truth, grow in courage, and hold on to hope together. Welcome back to the Not Just Waiting podcast, and today's conversation is a little extra special because this is a bonus episode, and I am so grateful that you're here for it. Today, I'm joined by Victoria Fortuna, a cherished daughter, sister, and friend, and coach to many. Victoria has such a beautiful gift for making people feel seen, heard, and deeply valued, whether she's known them for years or just met them that day. She feels most aligned with her calling when she's encouraging others around a dinner table, through her writing and coaching, or simply by showing up as a faithful friend. Drawing from her own experiences of grief, miracles, and the seasons of uncertainty, Victoria gently reminds others that God is present in every part of their story, even the parts that feel unfinished or unclear. While she lives deeply rooted in the present, her heart also carries the steady reminder that this world is not our home. This conversation is tender, thoughtful, and full of encouragement for anyone learning to trust God in the middle of their story. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Not Just Waiting podcast. I'm so glad you guys are here, and I'm so glad that I get to introduce you to Victoria today. Victoria, did you know that you are my most requested guest on the podcast?
I did not know that. Wow.
I
I'm
know.
honored.
You should be. It was quite funny. I did like what is it called? A poll. That's the word I was looking for. And I was asking some of my friends, hey, who do you want to see on the podcast? Your name came up at least 5 times.
Wow. That is shocking. Does my mom follow you? Does she just like over and over put her
It wasn't even your mom. It was some of our mutual friends that have been on the podcast before.
I love that.
But I just wanted to let you know that you genuinely are my most requested guest. So welcome. So glad you're here.
Wow. I'm so glad to be here. Wow. That is a great way to hype me up right before we start. Thank you.
Well,
So fun.
friends, you got to learn a little bit about Victoria and her bio, and I know that you're going to have all kinds of questions for her after, but I get to ask the questions for right now. So on the podcast this year, we've been chatting about becoming in the in-between season and what the Lord is doing to us and our character and our calling in those seasons. Because I don't know about you, Victoria, but I don't really like to wait. It's not my favorite thing. I was not equipped to do it well. And earlier we were chatting about how you were previously an elementary school teacher. I was also previously an elementary school teacher. And I don't know about you when you went to school and you got your degree and you're like, I'm going to do this for forever. And then forever does not happen.
No. I always say, be careful what you say out loud, because at this point, I'm convinced God might hear us. Which is obviously a joke. He hears us. But I'm like, it's crazy. The things that I'm like, I will always do this, or I'm like, I need to stop speaking so definitively because I sound silly.
I've even noticed that, like, I live near DC, and we went to Washington, D.C. for my senior trip, my brothers and I and my parents. And I remember being 18 years old and being like, man, I'd love to live here. Not ever dreaming that I would live 45 minutes from Washington, D.C.
Yeah,
And I've done that a couple of other times. So when you were like, yeah,
totally.
we need to be careful, I 100% stand behind that.
Yes, absolutely. But maybe that's just God's grace to us, is it not? Like planting the idea before, because it would be wild had we not already had that thought.
Yeah, I can see that too. I'm thinking about 6 different things that have happened in my life that I've said out loud
Totally.
and the Lord has fulfilled.
Totally. He sees us. He knows us.
He does. He surely does. So, while we are on this train of the Lord sees and knows us, can I ask you a couple questions?
Of course.
So, my first question for us is, who do you sense God has been forming you into in this season, especially in ways that weren't visible or celebrated?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a powerful question because I think like who God is forming me into, is the ticket to that question, right? So for so long, I always wanted what God was forming me into. I was so consistently like after the woman who I perceived God was trying to build. And it's so not about that. God, He has plans for us, of course. Like He has intentions for us, and He is a good father with good gifts and good plans. But this season, like, I know we don't know each other too well. I'm so grateful that we get to do this together to know each other a little bit more. But like, it's been a really hard, almost decade, like 7, 8 year, like uphill climb for me. And man, like who God has shaped me and crafted my relationship to Him and like who I am is just so different than what I was actually like out for. So I would say like who He's been forming me to be in this season is like a lover of Him and of His presence and of who He is as opposed to what He can do for me. Um and yeah, that's not often visible and that's not often celebrated, right? Like so often the book deal is celebrated, and that's great, and it should be celebrated. I am not in any way I hope one day to have one, like, I'm not coming against that, but it's interesting, like, in seasons that feel like, "Man, this is an uphill climb," and I think I'm the only one noticing, which I actually don't believe is true. I think the people around us definitely are noticing, but yeah, I think who I am. I'm softer than I ever was comfortable with being. The word even soft to me at the start of this was like, one of my best friends, I say this often, I am single. And so I often will say, that won't work for me. He's not durable enough. And she's like, when you use the word durable about a human being, it drives me nuts because she's like, durable is not about humans, but I like, that's my mindset, right? But I've seen myself in the last few years be like, I'm not durable enough, and the reality is I'm not. I need to be softer. I need the presence of God, so, yeah, I think who God has crafted me to be is, like, somebody who's willing to sit at His feet even when the answers have not come.
Yeah. And I think specifically growing up, when you said durability, I was like, "Oh, I feel that." Because even the word soft kinda makes me cringe. I'm sure it makes you cringe a little bit, but it's so necessary because if we're soft, then we're pliable.
Totally.
And you talking about it being a hard decade, I also relate to that. Because you start somewhere and you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna land here." And then the things don't happen, and then the Lord moves you, and you're like, "Well, I didn't but, okay, this was not the plan. I did not go to school for this. I do not have degrees for this. What do you
Yes.
mean I don't need to know how to do this for the rest of my life?" And then even your comment about the book deal, like, people do celebrate them, but they don't know the 2, 4, 7 years before, and then the book, and then the 3, 6, 5 years after, and you're
Yeah,
like, "Oh, we celebrated a 300-page book, and we didn't celebrate the 10 years surrounding it."
right. Totally. Yeah. That's what's so hard, right, about, like it's just the invisible work, right? The stuff that's not necessarily visible, that's what the Lord is after, and scripture is so clear that, like, that work, it's dug out, like, those wells are dug out to fill us with more of Him, right? And that's not always something that, like, in our society and not just ours, I'm not even just talking about 2020 or 2026. This was years ago too, like, it's just that silent work, it's between you and God, and so, yeah, it's hard work, and it takes a willingness to continue to engage in that, and that is a huge part of my story too, with some of, like, the griefs that I've experienced over the last few years. It came to a point, for me, we actually had a massive loss in my family. We lost my 11-month-old niece, and in that I remember in that season being like, I'm either gonna turn from God here, or I'm gonna not be able to turn from this for the rest of my life because He's either gonna be who I believe Him to be, or I'm just gonna give up on it, and of course, like, who He is to me was not something I wanted to or could even turn my face from, and I think that for me is like that, you know, beauty from ashes, like, not a thing I would ever write, but I see, like, his, like, restoration in that of that it, like, transformed my entire life to say, "I'm gonna take him at his word even here." And so I think that like, that stuff that's not celebrated is the stuff that shifts us for eternity, for sure.
Yeah. And speaking of seasons, because you're talking about like the Lord moving in different ways, was there a specific season, and it might be the season you just talked about, where God seemed more focused on shaping your character than your calling? And what did that form in you?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, it's a tricky question for me when I talk about seasons because what most people know about me, like if you've followed me on social media for 5 seconds, you probably know that back when I was a baby, like 7 years ago, or so, I was like in my mid-20s, I decided to start an adoption journey, for my daughter who, is in Jamaica, which is after school, I graduated, I went right to Jamaica as a missionary. Yeah, and so when I think of seasons, like, I think I'm still in that season. Like, I'm just starting to be in this weird place of, like, I might be transitioning out of a season because about a year and a half ago, the United States government deemed it a failed adoption after, years and years of fighting to get her home. She is now 17, and the fight in the same context does not make sense to continue to carry it in the way that I was. And of course, this is longer than anything I could tell you on a podcast right now. We would definitely need a pot of coffee in front of us, but which come on over, we can do that. But I it's interesting when I think about seasons because I think we will use that phrase as like this short time in our life, which is a season, right? A season is a short snippet of time, but really the last like 7 years or 8 almost 8 years is one season for me, and I think when I think about that, that feels really hard to me because it feels unfair. It feels like I wish I would have been pulled out of that season faster. That entire thing, and again, I would say I'm still in that because I'm still, like, battling some of the pain, and I think I will battle that for the rest of my life. You know, I'm in my bio, I'm sure you remember me saying, like, my whole ministry, everything I stand on is, like, to be continued because I believe that this cannot be it. Like, there has to be more. Like, God has to say at the end of this, there's more to be continued. Um, but when I look at this season of, like, God asking me to engage with something and then it failing and still feeling like his hand is in it through the whole thing, there is no doubt in me that it was God shaping my character above my calling, and that's not to say that I believe God is manipulative and asked me to do something just to get me to be, like, better for him, that I probably believed that for a big portion of it. It was like, God is just using me then, I don't understand kinda thing, but now I see, like, my motherhood, though it looks different, feels different than I ever would have wanted it to, or even want it to in the future to look, like, he shaped my character in a way that when I step into that next thing that he has for me, whether it is actual, like, my hands are physically parenting, like, making breakfast for kids that wake up in my home, or it's parenting other people's children or a fostered or adopted child, whatever it might be, the character and, like, the calling of who God has asked me to be in him is prominently my best foot forward, where before I think I was fighting to be the thing, have the title, where God's titling me and saying, "You are mine," and from that place is where you can operate in your actual calling. So, yeah, like, I'm still learning that. I mean, I cried myself to sleep on Mother's Day a couple like, last
Mhm.
week, I am not in any way being like, "Yeah, so I learned that, and I'm, like, on to the next," but I do know that my character in this year is different and more set on who Christ is than it was when I cried myself to sleep Mother's Day 2025. And I think I will be better in 2027. And maybe I'll be a mother, right, in 2027. That would be a wild change of events. A lot of things would have to happen really fast. But who knows? Who am I to doubt the Lord? But yeah, I think that's my final answer. Like who Christ is shaping me to be is to just be more sanctified to him. And I think that this season of waiting for me, though it be long and hard, I know with such confidence it was for a steadiness in him and not for a title that he wants to give me.
Yeah, absolutely. If you could go back to yourself 7 years ago, what would
Yeah.
you tell her?
Run! No, I'm just kidding. Ah, um, here's what I know about God. If I were to right now if I were to know 7 years ago what I know now, I think I would have run. And I'm not gonna be able to pull it out of my hat, but one of my favorite quotes, the gist of it, right, is like, "If you had known what God was calling you to do, you would have never started it." And so in his grace, like, he's going to give you what you can receive and accept in the moment. And I remember maybe, like, 5 or 6 years ago, I was on staff of my church, and one of our one of my ministry pastors, he said to me, he said, "I don't think this road is gonna get much easier for you really quickly here. You just have to choose in the next 5 minutes to do what you can with what God has asked you to do, and every 5 minutes, just keep doing it. And just keep going back to the last thing God asked of you and just do it." And I'm gonna be honest, like, I still do that, and I hope that I do that for the rest of my life. And so what would I tell myself, when I always say I was single and homeless in terms of, like, I literally was living in one of my campus pastor's basements,
Mhm.
and was making $17,000 a year when I decided to adopt my daughter. Um, I would tell her to do it and I don't think I would have to because I have just been obsessed with honoring God with my life, and so I would just tell her to keep following her heart. But I would tell her to, like, keep the main thing, because for so there I did not walk it out perfectly. There was so much of, like, my strong holding of what I thought the outcome would be, not just in my adoption. I mean, there was a lot of, like, boy stuff in between there too. That I would tell her to run from, Imma be honest. But, like, just keeping my desire to be close to the chest of Christ, like, I would encourage her to just do that because waiting never got easier, but knowing who I am in Christ grew, and with that, like, the testing of my faith, like, built in an endurance. The endurance I say all the time, like, God's gonna ask me to run somewhere really far. I don't know, because my endurance is high because my faith has been tested for a really long time. Yeah.
Love and hate your story all at the same time
Yeah, me
because
too.
I love the endurance that the Lord has built in you, but I like the very human part of me is like, "Lord, why haven't you redeemed it yet?"
Totally.
But when he does redeem it in the ways that we can't explain because he's the Lord, it's gonna be one of the coolest stories ever because it's only gonna be able to be explained through the Lord.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I'm with you in that. I'm like, "Y y you are about to show off." And one of the things that I feel like I has been really frustrating and hard for me through this whole season is, like, you ask anyone you know, like, anyone I'm in community with, and they will say, like, "Victoria believes her breakthrough is coming." Like, I I don't think it's delusional because I know it's from the Lord, but, like, it's kind of delusional faith. It's kind of that, like, I'm gonna speak to that mountain and it'll melt, and I truly, like, sometimes in my lowest moments, I'm like, "You are delusional, Victoria." Just, like, curse God and die kinda thing, right? Like, that
Mhm.
would be easier. But and this is not my strength, which is why I feel I can boast in it. It's like Christ's power made perfect in me that I actually do believe it. And so I actually know, and I have seen glimpses of it. Like I have good gifts that God has like lavished on me. One of which is my house. I was telling you, like, this house was literally a gift from God. I live in the middle of the forest on 3 acres of literal trees. I'm looking out my window here, there's birch trees, I'm looking out my window there, there's a lilac tree, like, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place, and that was never in the cards for me, like, I never perceived that as a gift, but in this whole season, like, I chased with high, high faith, like, a place for my daughter to come home to, and
Mhm.
in that, like, pursuit of those things, God said, "I'm gonna give you this, kid. I trust you with this, and this is what I'm going to bestow on you," and, you know, people will say, one of our mutual friends, Claudia Campbell, she always says, like, "You have the most, like, unrealistic hospitality." Like, it's not rational. Like, there's nothing rational about it, and I say all the time, "You know why? God gave me an empty house." And so I invite people into it all the time, and I cook for people in it all the time, and if there's somebody who needs a bed to sleep in, they know they can sleep in mine. Like, that came from a void of what I was asking God to fill with something else, and so that, like you saying, "I hate your story, but love it," me too. Like, I love that somebody will look at me and say, "Man, that is an unrealistic hospitality, like, gift." All I can say is, like, bless God because did not come from me. It was not my bright idea to be like, "Let me have a house to welcome people in." It was his, and I just have to be faithful in the next 5 minutes to steward it the way he asked me to steward it.
Yeah. Mm, what a story. What a beautiful, like, glimpse into what the Lord's doing because He's equipped you in this season. Now, you don't know why you have the space you have, in the space you have it, but He gave it to you and He knows you're going to steward it well. So, like, you can't see the goosebumps on my arm, but like your story so resonates with a lot of us that are in those seasons that we're in the in between. Like, the Lord has gifted us something. We don't know why. We don't know what to do with it, but we know that He's going to use it. And, I mean, you're talking about your house, I'm staring at my empty house, and the toys that are sitting on my carpet over here for when the little friends come over. Like, they literally have their own blocks under our TV stand of what they can play with, because I'm like, "Okay, Lord, I have an empty house, just like you do." And in these seasons, probably before you even dreamed of being a mom in this case, like, you were staying on somebody's couch, which I've also lived that life. So I'm, like, resonating with a lot of it.
Yeah.
I've got the basement with no windows. I've been there, done that. But, like, when you were there, you weren't dreaming of having a house, getting to host people because you're at the beck and the hospitality of other people.
Mhm.
And living that life is so different than the life you now live. But those, again, are just the seasons that the Lord puts us in. We have small seasons, we have large seasons, and in each scenario, He's teaching us and building our character in ways that we can't imagine and sometimes don't want.
Yes. Yes. Often.
Mhm. Yep, I agree. We've talked a lot about expectations and timelines, whether we like kind of subtly. But what have you had to release? Whether that's expectations, timelines, your identity, maybe all three, maybe a couple of them, in order to become who God is inviting you to be now.
Yeah. I I have had to release a lot of expectation of, like, kinda what I just said of what I thought my life would look like. I am 33 and I am single, and I my whole life, like, always I used to say, like, "I think I'll have a dozen kids." Like, I used to think, like, I come from a big family. I l I have the title of, like, chaos coordinator in all ways, and I just always was like, "That's just who I am." And so releasing, like, my perception of that has been a huge part of this, like, of health in my waiting, right? So, I would say at the beginning of again, like, my adoption journey is largely, um, how the Lord has shaped me, but there's a lot of other things that come into play with that too. Like, you know, I probably make the best pasta that you've ever had. Like, and I'm not saying that to be super prideful, but like I can cook and I love having my home and like again, it's like releasing those things of like you'd be a good wife, releasing that and being like that's true and
Yeah.
I can be a good friend and I can be a good sister and I can be a good minister of the gospel by providing meals to people in my church and like so it's that expectation of like the gifts God has given me are for fill in the blank. And again, it's not as if I've been able to fully release that. I don't know that that's even, and I don't think that's what you're saying to me, but I don't think that's even what the Lord is asking of me. I don't think it's bad for me to one day hope that I'm somebody's wife and mother. I actually really have high hopes for that. And it's not too late for me. But if I'm like, I'm not a mother, I'm not like cooking dinner for a husband, that's foolish. Like that is wasting what the Lord has gifted me in this season. And it's not trusting him with what he's put in my hands. And believe, I believe in the word of God. And the word of God says like there is no thing missing or lacking for those who love the Lord. And if there's one thing I know, it's that my heart loves the Lord. I don't do it perfectly. I don't show up with, perfection every time, but I know that I love the Lord. And so today, there is not one thing missing or lacking that is a good and perfect gift for me. And so what that tells me is like the gifts he has given me are not for the thing that I'm hoping for in the future. So it's a release of like the time frame in which I perceived it to be happening and saying, God, with the next 5 minutes, I trust you. Like tonight, like literally when we're done with this podcast, like one of my former youth kids and her mom is like coming over for dinner like that. And if I'm like angry that it's not my own teenager, like I'm missing it, right? Now there can be grief in that too. I'm not saying that you have to do things with like only joy. Like there can be grief and there is. I think for a long time I like lied to myself and be like said you have to be happy in all things, right? But like joy is different than like complete happiness. And so I can grieve things as I'm walking out like the blessing of another. And I think like if I were to say again back to your last question, like what would I tell younger me? It would be like say and instead of or. You can on Mother's Day like last week, honestly, a couple weeks ago, I was experiencing, like, extreme joy. It was my sister's graduation, I was with my family, like, my nephew is there, who I'm absolutely obsessed with, like and also, I had to take a minute and cry, like, so I can do both, and honestly, I think I've come to the place in my grief that I'm like, I have to be able to do both because I'm gonna do it, but so it has to be allowed, right? And so releasing myself and trust and inserting God is the only way to walk out the identity and like that like who he's inviting me to be now is like releasing those expectations even over myself.
Yeah. You just gave us so much permission to live in that and spot, which is also the in between spot. When you were talking about your story, like it's like you were inside my head. Because I live a lot of what you live, and it's the and portion of the joy and the grief that we mistake sometimes. We assume that we have to be all the way happy or all the way sad. And a lot of times I live in the middle of both most of my life
Totally.
as a grown up. I have been lied to as a child. I live in that in between spot of there's the small people that are at my house, but also I wanted them to be mine. Like I get that. And even like the Mother's Day thing you were talking about, I have not been in the same situation as you have. Your situation is wild and crazy and zany, but I've been in similar ones and like enjoying the graduation, hanging out with your family, FaceTiming your niece, like niece, nephew, got it? Like same life. And at the same time, like laying in your bed and crying because you've had these experiences and this was not at all what you expected this to be. Hey, friend. I just wanted to tell you about something I made for you this month, and it is completely free. If you've ever found yourself scrolling through someone else's announcement, an engagement, a new job, a life that seems to be moving, and felt that quiet ache of wondering why yours feels like it's standing still, this is for you. It's called the Comparison Audit. It's a short, honest worksheet, only 4 questions, that help you figure out whose timeline you've actually been measuring yourself against. Because most of the time, the behind feeling isn't really about you. It's about a timeline you absorbed somewhere along the way that was never actually yours to begin with. It also includes a scripture reflection page and a borrowed prayer for the nights when the comparison feels loudest. It's free, it only takes a few minutes, and I think it might give you language for something you've been carrying for a while. You can find the link in the show notes or head to my Instagram at rihanna.ivy.hoff and grab it from my bio. Okay, back to our conversation. And so I think you just gave us so much permission to live in that, and because the expectations that we have for ourselves, not just the expectations that other people have on us, the unkind comments and all those things. I'm not talking about those. The ones that we have for ourselves when we close the door to our bedrooms at night and we lay in our bed and we're like, hi, this was not the plan. You can hear my voice getting all choked up. This was not the plan. Lord, what are you doing? What character are you building in me? There's joy and grief. How do I hold both? And then you realize you're not built to hold both, but He is. Like, that's why we lean on Him. That's why we trust in Him. That's why we believe that He says He's going to do what He's going to do, and that your story isn't over, because He is a God of redemption and restoration.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think too, like, I spoke a little bit to this, but one of the things that really shifted in me, like I said, was when my niece passed. And it gets kind of heavy and it's hard sometimes, especially if you don't know me. I'm not leveraging this story in any way. Eh, but there was something about, like, up until that point, like I said, I was a girl who believed breakthrough was going to happen. There was nothing in me that would have told, like, you couldn't have told me that, like, you know, my daughter wasn't gonna come home, or that boy wasn't gonna come back, or, like, whatever it was. I believed it, like, delusionally sometimes. It was different when, like, my niece died. And the goodness of God was only going to be that we would be reunited in heaven. My understanding of, like, what God is going to gift us here changed,
Mhm.
because we had my niece as a good gift, and then that gift took her position in heaven, and we weren't going to see her again until we took ours. And it was in that moment when I, like, not maybe in that moment, but, like, in those months of being like, am I going to trust God that here He's going to restore what's been stolen? Or am I going to be able to shift my eyes to heaven and say, He is writing a good story, even if I never hold it in my hands?
Mm.
And so, because she's not coming back, and that weight is, like, the heaviest thing I'll carry, I think, for the rest of my life. But, like, also, my daughter might never live in the room upstairs that has a sign on the door that says her name's apostrophe room. Like, it literally has her name on the door, and I don't know if she'll ever sleep in there. I mean, maybe, I hope, like, there's hope for it. I mean, who knows? But am I going to say, like, God's not good, or my story's not good, or He hasn't restored if what I perceive and asked for doesn't come true? Or am I going to say, like, I'm gonna walk this thing out with you. I'm gonna do it. I'm going to hold your hand, even if I'm mad at you, and even if this is hard, and even if it doesn't make any sense, and I'm also going to look for the miracles every step of the way. And it was that, like, perspective shift for me when, like, I had to be okay with ashes too. Like, restoration means something was broken. Something was stolen. My niece's life on earth was stolen. There's no restoration that brings that back in its completion until we are with Christ, with her. And so, like, what will I allow myself to believe restoration has to look like? And I'm either going to white knuckle myself into misery, or I'm going to open my hands and say, God, please fill them with things that honor you, no matter what it is, no matter how it looks. Yeah, and I'm still learning that. So I'm preaching to myself. I don't know.
So good. Now my brain needs to rest. Um, Thank you for sharing your story with us and being so vulnerable with us. And I think it meets a lot of us in different spaces because none of us have your story, but a lot of us have pieces of it. And I genuinely am now on the team of I can't wait to watch Victoria's life come to completion. Like, on the edge of my seat with anticipation. So ready for that breakthrough because, like, it's only going to be explained through the Lord. Mm,
Yeah. Butter that popcorn, girl. Let's sit and watch.
yes, I am ready. Um, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners today? I know we've talked about a lot.
Yeah, I would just say I think I think, like, the heaviness of my story can sometimes feel like, well, I don't know, my story's not that heavy, or maybe it's like, yeah, but you don't maybe I don't understand your heaviness, kind of like you were saying. Nobody can perceive how I'm feeling exactly, but getting glimpses of it, but I just wanna say, like, trusting and releasing my expectation on God is where I found true freedom, and I would say maybe actually, I shouldn't say maybe, I know exactly when it was. July of last year, I was sitting in a hammock, and I felt the Lord say, "The tide has changed," and but nothing had shifted, like, literally everything was the same. Everything was broken and in ashes and ruins, and honestly, it still is. But in that, like, last July, when the Lord said that to me, I believed him, and, like, I have found freedom since then. My story looks the exact same as it did last July. Nothing has shifted, but what has shifted is, like, a freedom for me in, like, a closing out of a season, like, a closing out is what I just want anyone and everyone who ever hears my story to know that, like, if God said it, we need to believe it. And, like, I pray, like, scripture says that testimony gives way to prophecy, and, like, I want my testimony, even though it's hard and, like, you and our listeners can, like, relate to it, let it make way for prophecy. Like, let it make way for, like, the things that are coming, that we are waiting for. Let the testimony of who God is today and who he says he is today, let it be that prophecy. Like, let it be the things that we're waiting for and believing in. And just believe that he's more creative than we are, you know? Like, believe that the best story I could come up with is nothing compared to what he could write in his hopes and story and dream for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing with us today and your story. And I'm genuinely am getting the popcorn ready to watch the breakthrough happen. Where can we connect with you outside of this podcast?
Yeah, you can connect with me on Instagram, at Victoria Rose Fortuna. That is really where I source everything. I have a Substack, victoriafortuna.substack.com. I would love for you to follow along there. Um, yeah.
Awesome. We're going to leave all those links in our show notes. So if you're like, man, I need to like connect with Victoria, it's in the show notes. Click it and hit follow. And then
Yes.
click the Substack one and hit subscribe.
Yes.
For real.
Absolutely.
And friends, now that you have access to Victoria, please go tell her thank you for jumping on the podcast. And if there's something that she said that sparked something in you or was an encouragement, please let her know. Because we're so grateful that you jumped on. And we're so grateful that our most sought after guests joined us today.
Wow,
And now
what
we
an
know
honor.
why.
You're so sweet. So fun. I hope to do it again.
Yes, let's do it again.
Yeah.
When you have your book, or when you have your daughter, or when the Lord does something even crazier. Let's just do it again.
Absolutely.
We need a
Absolutely. Always.
reconciliation podcast of, hi, this is what the Lord did. So,
Yes.
can't wait.
Yes. And until then, I believe it's to be continued.
I love it. This is why you guys need to go listen to our Substack, because she just kind of hinted something to you. Just in case you didn't know. Well, friends, it's been fun. I'm going to let her go feed her people. But it has been an honor and a privilege, Victoria. Thank you so much. And guys, we'll see you next week. Bye, friends. Thanks for listening to the Not Just Waiting podcast. I hope today reminded you that even in the in-between, God is working, and you are not alone. If this episode encouraged you, would you share it with a friend? And don't forget to hit follow so you never miss a moment of truth, hope, and real conversation. You can find me on Instagram at rihanna.ivy.hoff and join the community over on Substack for deeper reflections and weekly encouragement. Until next time, take heart, friend. God is in the waiting with you.